Last year, the coronavirus pandemic took over the news, but global warming kept happening anyway. In 2021, things are moving on, and governments are taking important decisions when it comes to the climate, even if the coronavirus still dominates the news. So here's 3 main climate news we'll be watching out for this year. Hey, this is Fatima at Ecosia, and before we start, don't forget to tell us in the comments what you think of this new series. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so yet. The first piece of climate news to watch out for this year is, of course, the COP26 conference taking place in Glasgow, Scotland in November. COP stands for Conference of the Parties. It's basically the UN's annual climate change conference. It was supposed to happen in 2020, 5 years after the Paris Agreement was signed, but it was delayed because of the coronavirus, which is maybe not a bad thing because the main goal of COP26 was for countries to set emission reduction targets for the long term, but also for the next 10 years. Before the pandemic, the willingness of large emitting countries to make significant commitments was very small. But today, a year into a pandemic, and thanks to the incredible awareness campaigns made by climate activists and groups, the world looks very different. By now, the world's largest emitters, China and the US, have both committed, if loosely, to decarbonizing their economies.
This summit is a start of a road that will take us to Glasgow for the UN Climate Change Conference in November, where we're going to make these commitments real.
This means that in COP26 later this year, we might actually see some serious commitments to cutting emissions. We don't want to sound too optimistic though. These conferences have never been effective enough, and with most countries still coming out of a post-COVID recovery, they might just not be keen to commit to large green investments. And that's the next thing you need to watch out for this year: your country's plans to recover from COVID. As countries around the world come out of a post-COVID recovery, the question is how they intend to do this. Unfortunately, most countries are not using this time to rebuild our economies in a fairer and more sustainable way. Instead, recovery money is mostly being used to plug the holes of a broken system. And finally, this year we'll be paying close attention to the protection of environmental defenders around the world. Already 2020 was particularly ugly for environmental defenders, with at least 331 reported murders globally. A report by the NGO Global Witness from last year shows that there is no reason to believe that 2021 will be any better for them. We talked to Chris Madden from Global Witness about this.
When we talk about land environmental defenders, we're also talking about people on the front line of the climate crisis and really standing up to climate destructive industries. As consumer demand rises, companies are looking in ever more remote areas and increasingly coming into contact with remote communities, whether they're indigenous or not.
And with less journalists on the ground due to lockdown measures, many international companies from the US, Canada, or the EU are getting away easier with deforestation and abuse of human rights. If there is one single law to watch out for this year, it's the European Union's so-called due diligence legislation. The law is still being drafted, but the idea is that it would be binding and that it would require companies to address human rights and environmental standards within their value chains. The problem is that many of those companies are themselves involved in drafting that legislation through lobby groups, so it's very important that we all look closely at how that law evolves. Back to Chris Madden and environmental defenders.
In terms of putting it in the context of climate, we know that indigenous managed areas have better outcomes in terms of biodiversity and less deforestation. That's something that's that we were definitely keen to get across in the report, as well as in terms of just the real benefits to the global community from protecting these areas and protecting indigenous rights.
So in 2021, we'll be paying close attention to that European law, but also to how else we can create pressure on governments and institutions to protect environmental defenders. That's all for this episode. Check the description for more links on the topics that we mentioned. Give us a like on this video if you enjoyed it, and tell us in the comments what other news will you be watching out for in 2021.